You might have been expecting this one, but be mindful of these. Even if you've never touched a page or episode of Ashita no Joe before, you've seen it referenced, somewhere, I'm sure. If not a direct textual reference, it's the instantly iconic, influential, and unforgettable directing style of Osamu Dezaki, who's probably the most important dude to ever direct anime. That's not to understate the importance of other major creators in anime manga, but come on, you've seen it before, right? And these are just the ones off the top of my head from things I've gone through or seen others point out. I didn't have to research or anything. If you go through something Japanese, you're just opening yourself up to the blow, so I thought, why not talk about some of my favorite ones? It might be cheating to bring up these first two examples, but I can't pass up on mentioning Megalobox, Hajime no Ippo, or Gurren Lagann. These shows are very much capable of standing on their own even without the context of Joe, to the point that each of them is probably more well known than Joe in the English-speaking anime fandom, though in no small part due to their relative availability and recency, but they are built on the back of Joe, each of them homaging or iterating on Joe in their own respective ways. Megalobox, a modern retelling, and Gurren Lagann, a synthesis of a ton of influences, Joe very much among them. But as much as I love the ways these draw from Joe, it's Ippo that gives me the most chills when thinking about what it's doing. It's not a single moment that stands out to me, but rather a theme that is yet to receive its resolution in 140 volumes and counting. Represented in the anime adaptation with a piercing green stare, the boxers who achieve this state are the ones throwing their all into the ring, becoming monsters for the sake of reaching their limits. Takamura, the strongest pound-for-pound boxer in the series, is no doubt shaving himself away to achieve his absurd goal of world-class titles across 6 different weight classes. This machismo desire to excel and reach one's limits in pursuit of their goal is evocative of Yabuki Joe's fight against Jose, where his zombie-like resilience and refusal to lie down terrified Jose Mendoza, the gentleman losing his composure against a true beast. Ippo has something of a monster inside of him, but if it will ever see the ring is another matter. It might be that this monster is needed to achieve the top of the world once he learns how to tap into it, but it's just as possible that Ippo will find another path, one more sustainable in Ippo's iteration and response to Joe. For Joe, this burning soul led to his becoming white-hot ashes, the most iconic image from the entire series, the one most referenced, the one Naoki Urasawa got to hold the original manuscript of. I'm so fucking jealous. But in all these references, I'd like to highlight a few. I'm most appreciative when these are at their most meaningful. While my personal interpretation is that Joe's death is only as a boxer, what's more important is that he faces to the left, the direction you're reading in a manga, made all the more striking as it's the last page of the entire 20-volume series. Though Joe's story is over, he continues to look towards tomorrow. So when this element is captured in the reference, it makes it even more powerful for me. Kamena's last act was to work on breaking down Simone's walls, knowing the young boy possessed far more potential than he ever had. Ogami Sakura may have tragically bore the burdens of her past sins and the fear the others pushed onto her, but she also forced open the path the others could take to stopping the mastermind, ending the death game in its most literal sense and protecting those who would survive it. But what's ubiquitous among any series that references this scene is that they can't do it at the end. Only Ashita no Joe ever has and ever truly could. At any other time it's utilized, the series has to envision the tomorrow beyond that Joe only implies. All that said, I can like references to the moment when they're just funny. Like, look at this one from Heal and Good Precure. Nyatoran's just a cute little cat fairy, oh, look at him. But then he falls in love with a woman, prepares a gift to share his feelings, only to find out she's already getting married. Rip Bozo. Like, the target audience probably wasn't even alive the last time Joe was rerun on TV, they wouldn't catch this reference. Please don't correct me on this, I was just making a joke, I didn't check any Japanese TV guides or anything, I'm sorry. There's also this one from Kishiru Sentai Re-Soldier, where boxing dinosaur mech is turned to white-hot ashes, the electrical transmission tower and cables used to resemble a boxing ring corner, something missing in basically all of these other references. That's pretty clever. Actually, let me reframe it. These are my favorite comedy usages of that specific Joe reference. My actual favorite comedic Joe reference is probably from Renkin Sankyu Magical Bokan. The vampire Pakira is dissatisfied with the other pickings and decides she wants the warm liquid of a hot blood transfusion nurse inside of her. That's not even a joke, the girls in the show are just that horny. Seeking the transfusion he politely offered in an emergency situation, she goes on a fast, using tomato juice to curb her hunger pangs, the G-rated vampire drink of choice. While she ultimately well, she thinks she got her blood transfusion from the nurse. The real punchline for me was when she hit her limit, struggling against the protection she'd placed on her friends herself. Eikou, unable to see her friend like this, offers her what she claims to be fresh blood, preferring to see her happy and healthy rather than at the end of her rope. But it's those feelings that Pakura is able to subsist on.
ありがとう、愛子。私、もう少しで負けてしまうところだったわ。キザな言い方だけど、愛子のその涙を見て、決意が固まったわ。
You know, the first time I watched this, I might have been able to pick up on it from the hoodie and the dripping water. On the rewatch, her failed attempt to get blood and even the fixation on tomatoes stuck out to me in this scene's reference to Rikishi's weight control training. Subsisting only on that red fruit and driven to an absolute mental limit, the parody scene has stuck with me because of how the punchline once caught me completely off guard, like, well... To this day, it's still the most memorable and amusing joke from the show for me, though that's partly because I didn't really care for the show that much. I'm sorry, Magical Bokan fans watching this, I hope both of you are doing okay. Still, Magical Bokan gets the last word, as the final major difference in the scenes is that Yoko is a woman of status and power, and Eikou, well, she's a maid.
掃除するの私なのに。
So, as we wind down to the end of the video, we reach my two favorite times Joe has been referenced in another work. And for the first one, there's a stage that needs to be set. In 20th Century Boys, it's the near future and vast swaths of the populace have been eradicated by a viral disease. What remains is under the tyrannical control of the one who secretly masterminded mankind's destruction. The man-child friend, still burdened by the drama of his childhood friend group, now working to end it all. Gone from the story for 10 volumes is Kenji, the leader of that same friend group, the one everyone had been pinning their hopes on. And when he does return, he adopts a familiar name, Yabuki Joe. This chapter title in one of the next volume even directly referencing Ashita no Joe, but Kenji's not a boxer. He's not as temperamental, he's just a middle-aged guy who plays music and faces down the most vile people in history. But in taking the name of Yabuki Joe, Kenji reveals that he is the one, not the friend, who has the ideal vision of the future. 20th Century Boys is a series that dives heavily into nostalgia for the 70s, juxtaposing its idyllic vision of the turn of the century with its reality. The further jump to the future is even more bleak, with humanity on its last legs. But while Friend is trapped in his past, Kenji has the best understanding of the present, and the healthiest view on the past. There is a nostalgia as he still strives to become a rock star after so long, after rock has been all but erased from the world. There is still nostalgia as he references Ashita no Joe, a cultural touchstone from that same period of time, even appropriated by radical youth groups trying to invoke change, although with less ideal means. But that nostalgia isn't a longing, it's a respect that doesn't keep him from carrying on the most important sentiment from that past. Even in this dark hour, he's still trying to see an ideal future. They may not be in the same world envisioned in the 70s, not by any stretch, but humanity still does have a future as long as they maintain that notion, no matter how bad things get. In a world only longing for yesterday, he's able to save it by being tomorrow's Joe. As much as I love the 20th Century Boys example, it's pretty broad, referencing the idea of Ashita no Joe rather than any specific moment. In that regard, Bakuman is a little different. The series opens with Mashiro aiming to become a manga author, a promise made with Azuki, who aims to become a voice actress with a role in an anime adaptation of his manga. Only then will they entwine their fates and marry each other. Until that point, they walk their own paths. Mashiro actually mentions that his favorite manga is Ashita no Joe, though he's not exactly always the most tactful about referencing it. His dream to become a manga author takes a rough turn during his first serialization, where the combined workload of weekly manga production and school lead to his hospitalization. The fallout? Editor-in-Chief Sasaki puts his series on hiatus, a functional death blow to their first serialization. Mashiro insists he can draw from the hospital, but Sasaki makes an exception against him. While many, myself included, would argue that manga authors need more systemic protections for the sake of their health, in the context of the story, Sasaki admits that he'd be willing to let other manga authors continue their serialization even after collapsing, but is taking exception to Mashiro because of his uncle, a failed manga author who died of overwork in his 30s. But Mashiro wants to keep drawing, because his dream, his tomorrow, rides on it. Azuki argues for him to stop, not wanting him to put himself at risk, but Mashiro says that manga is more important to him than her, preparing to go to his surgery like, Joe going into the ring in his final match. This does not alleviate Takagi's fears, but even so he brings his manga supplies so he can draw regardless. Yet when Mashiro is given pause by his pain, he comes to regret it, calling for a nurse. Azuki rebukes this. She may not like watching Mashiro struggle, but she calls out his hypocrisy in bringing him the manga materials to respect his choice, then go against that same choice when the going gets tough for a moment. And this is it. Mashiro, though he's risking himself, and though Azuki doesn't want to see it, she still stands behind him, because she sees the same tomorrow. In so many ways, this is in reference to Joe's final bout. Azuki and Yoko both tried to stop the one they loved beforehand, but after a moment of doubt, they instead choose to stand behind them when the ones who are in their corner try to pull away. Dampé preparing to throw in the towel against Jose Mendoza, matched by Takagi attempting to throw in the towel by calling nurses to help Mashiro. With the thread woven through so many years, so many things I like, maybe the odd thing I didn't care for, my biggest hope for the persistence and near-endless stream of references to such a phenomenal story is that no matter how old or where they're from, it'll push people to go back and experience a timeless classic, for the first time, or again, in either form. Thanks for watching the video. I've got cool stuff planned for the rest of the year, including a bunch of Bleach videos, so keep your eyes peeled. Don't forget to check out my side channel where I do media discussion podcasts and my streams. I'm starting Ace Attorney next time. Thanks for your support.